Hi, my name is Joe Dolan. I started with CSEA in 1965 as the Albany area field representative and left CSEA in 1982 as the executive director.
Okay. Now let me ask you the first question. What's your first recollection of CSEA?
First recollection of CSEA was the 3 bowling leagues that I had to join when I was the area field representative in 1965 so I could meet the people. There hadn't been a lot of communication, it seemed to me, between the area field representative and the local chapters at that time. The Albany area was the heart of the union at that time with membership and so on, and 75 or 80% of the board members were from different state agencies that were located here. So I thought I'd better get out and assimilate a little bit with them, so I joined 3 bowling leagues, and I can remember days when I went to 3 or 4 clam bakes the same day so I could get out and meet some of the folks. But that's a lot of what CSEA was about in 1965, bowling leagues and clam bakes.
Okay, now some of the big events that you were involved in, I guess the first was Taylor Law?
Oh, sure, yeah. The CSEA was the first major force, political force in the state to endorse the Taylor Law, and we were the only employee association or labor organization to endorse it at that time. I had the occasion to meet George Taylor. I took a course at Morton. He was from Morton School of Finance, and he was the guy that Rockefeller tapped to write the law. So as a result of that association, I sat with him several times, not to add to what he was doing because he knew the law and knew what he had to do. It's just that but it gave me a great insight into what the law meant and what different aspects of the law were meant to do, what meant to accomplish. And prior to the passage of the Taylor Law, Nelson Rockefeller, the governor at the time, called together an international symposium on public employer labor relations in New York City. Harold Wilson was the Prime Minister of Great Britain at the time, and he was the major speaker, the banquet speaker. At the banquet, we had representatives there from Japan and Germany and all the major countries now that we know as part of the EEC power base, France. They appeared to me to be a little naive at the time because the Germans said they loved their employees and they would take care of their employees. And 2 years later, the streets of Munich were piled high with garbage because the employees didn't show the love. But Harold Wilson was a very forceful speaker at the time. Remember, represented the Conservative Party, which was okay. But he pointed out the things that needed to be provided for in the law. You either had to provide for a legislative settlement, you had to provide a mechanism to negotiate a settlement, or you had to prohibit strikes, one of the 3. And I think the Taylor Law was probably one of the most omnibus pieces of legislation that was ever passed. It incorporated all of those provisions. And then, of course, the Public Employment Relations Board was formed, and then they promulgated rules that had to be on file. And so then we proceeded. The day the law was passed, there were probably 100 petitions filed. The governor had recognized CSEA as the representative for the entire state workforce, one unit, which, as we all look back now, we realize how absurd it was. But it was a kicking off point. But there had to be at least 100 petitions filed, some by Council 50 of AFSCME, so Kramer, who was the president of New York City, and then there was a local in Buffalo. I forget who the leadership was there, but there were petitions filed all over the state, which immediately created our relationship with PERB as the major player, and we continued to be the major player for several years. And I remember we had bargaining units in 67 of the 68 counties outside of New York City, 57 of the 58 counties outside of New York City. We didn't have one in Washington County because there was only 40 people. There were more cows there than people, so we kind of put them in with Hamilton County. And then there were 64 cities. I think we were in every city except New York City. 40% of the school districts in the state, there were 1,000 at the time. We represented the employees in those. So we were kind of the major gang around. And our first big challenge was that we had to go out and get rededications from all of our members. Our membership card at the time just said folks were applying for membership, so we had to get a new card that said applying for membership and designating CSEA as my bargaining agent. And that was a huge job for the staff, and they fanned out across the state, and you know, we got the cards and the showing of interest. But through the PERB hearings, we ended up with four bargaining units: PS&T, operational, administrative, which was fine. You know, Bob Helsby was the chairman of PERB at the time. Hit a hell of a golf ball as well as being chairman of PERB. I chatted with him a lot, and you know, they kind of knew what they were doing. We were around, and you know, we knew what we wanted. But I don't think that anyone ever dreamed that we would end up in one bargaining unit for all state employees. There was too much divergent interest there. So we went through several years with the Taylor Law. In the beginning, I used to send a courier up to PERB every day to pick up the petitions that were filed that day. We started certification, decertification files, and recognition, the resolution that came in from all over the state. Our law firm recommended that we write a letter to every local government in the state. It had to be 2,000 of them or more, and cities, towns, villages, and authorities. We did, demanding recognition. What the hell? Why not?
Well, it seems to me that's maybe the point where it changed from an association to a union.
Yeah. We reached out to Cornell, the ILR school at Cornell, the contract college, founded by Stanley Steingott's father, one of the 4 contract colleges there. And they sent us a couple of folks. Ron Dunham was a professor, and Dick Rubin was, I think, maybe an associate or assistant professor at the time. And I ended up calling them Dingbat and Robin because they had an understanding of labor law as it had applied in the private sector, and a lot of it, you know, has flown over more now than then, because it was resistance on public employers' part mainly, and we weren't really that familiar with it, so you know, we kind of resisted it too. But they came in and they organized seminars for us, and I'll never forget the first one out at Siena College. That we had all of the statewide officers there. And Joe Feely was the president, and Hazel Abrams was the secretary, and other folks from around. And we probably had 30 or 35 people show up on a Saturday out at Siena. And Dick Rubin was, I guess, the bad guy in the good guy, bad guy team. And well, you've got the Taylor. I'll never forget it. You've got the Taylor law now. What are you going to do? You're going to go on strike? And I looked over, and Hazel Abrams, the tears started running down her face. And I said, boy, are we in trouble. But he scared them into the realization that there was all new ball game. And an all new attitude had to be developed. And so we just kind of, you know, went along with the law. And my association and chats with George Taylor had given me some insight, I think, to a position where I could argue with PERB about things, and I did. Caught them twice in misapplication of the law and pointed it out to them. So you know, it was a good, very good working relationship. We knew all the staff; they knew us. We went through elections for the operational. We went through elections for the administrative. We went through elections for the unit for the health workers in the hospitals. We went through elections for the PS&T unit. We were successful, obviously. History will tell you, in the first 3. We weren't successful with the PS&T because of their, I guess, their uniqueness, professional. They resisted being thrown in with, or kept in with the other folks. So they left us and formed PEF, another organization now that exists in the state. And but we were on good terms with them. Joe McDermott, who was a very active member of that group, ended up being elected as executive vice president, I think, from regional president to executive vice president, and then he succeeded the presidency. So out of the PS&T loss came, we were given Joe for leadership, in a leadership role, and he became one of the 2 international vice presidents. You know, for AFSCME.
Yeah.
Well,
that leads us to AFSCME.
Yeah. After all the dust settled, with the, not all of the dust, but a lot of the dust, because we were still being challenged in a lot of quarters, not only by AFSCME, but by the Teamsters and the communication workers, George Miller and the communication workers challenge, and bridge and structural steel painters. We were at a representation meeting for the New York State Thruway, and I forget, Malloy, I think his name was, a little Irish kid who was a business agent for the bridge and structural steel painter. So we're going down the bargaining on the list that the Thruway proposed, and he gets to bridge painter, tugboat captain, and says to the Thruway representative, they full-time employees? Yep, they are. Well, we'll probably keep them in unit. Well, sure, we should. Oh, what do they do in the wintertime? Just a little jocular relief for the day. And of course, nobody had an answer what the tugboat captain did in the winter when the river was frozen, or the bridge painter did in the winter, you know. But we went through, hundreds of representations, which call for a new CSEA, actually, and we fared pretty well. But then Jerry Worf, Al Worf, his brother, represented AFSCME here in the state, and I forget the attorney's name, but he had an airplane, so they used to fly in and fly out, a little two-seater, three-seater Cessna, whatever it was. But then when it came time for the major challenge, and everybody was in the AFL-CIO were after us, because we were a couple 100,000 strong, you know, local government and state government, and we were kind of very effective in the state. I thought we were, anyways, lobbying and laws and stuff like that. We set the prevailing wage rate in school districts in the state because of the membership that we had in school districts. So, we were able to accomplish a lot of things, and they knew that. And we probably needed them. I wasn't convinced of it when they first approached us, and I wasn't the executive director either. But so they started to come in and sniff around when Ted Wenzel was president. The OER director for the state, nicknamed Ted the Adorable, said it reminded him of a headless horseman, just shoulders with hair growing out of it. It wasn't very complimentary, but Ted led us through the 1974 strike, which we called on Good Friday, and I just tell everybody that when people call in tomorrow morning and say how effective is the strike, tell them that 85% of the state facilities are closed. Of course, it was Saturday and Sunday, and they were. But the prisons were open, and we had a couple of our gents who got arrested for refusing to take a picket line down at, like, Auburn prison. But I'd gone out, I'd reached out to the Teamsters, and the Teamsters councils across the state had agreed that they would respect our picket lines for deliveries. The communication workers, George Miller, said they wouldn't send any telephone repair people in. So I forgot to mention that my father, before me, had been president of the local 227, the Chemical Workers Union, International Union of Chemical Workers, and I listened to his stories all my life about conventions and this and that, strikes. And I remember one time he got arrested for laying down in front of on railroad tracks to stop a trainload of coal going to a struck plant. So I kind of had that, and then through his affiliation, I met a lot of the people, that he had done business with, knew. And then in mentioning Joe Dolan to people and asking for help, they'd say, "Are you Joe Dolan's son?" "Yes, I am." So, well, being here, I know everybody was, most of the unions were headquartered here because of the political that need to be in the shadow of the Capitol. So we had pretty good success in '74. Wenzel, of course, got served, and I don't know, they painted a procedure, service procedure on the door of the our building and stuff like this. All great fodder for the media. We got fined, and we lost our payroll deduction, and we had to go out and we had coupons printed, and people had to pay us with the coupons, which they did in great numbers. We lost some money, obviously, but the support was there from the people that we had with us. And then Jerry came in. Bill McGowan beat Ted for the presidency, and the law firm that we had decided that there might be too much of a conflict of interest between representing CSEA and representing the American Medical Association and other folks. So they kind of resigned from a great firm, DeGraff, Foy, Holt, Harrison, Conway, very effective politically in the city and in the state. But they just decided in their wisdom it was time to move on because of the emerging if you will, CSEA. So they did. Two of their junior partners left the firm and came with us and became our in-house counsel. So they kind of were involved in the negotiations with Jerry, and they were protracted. I mean, we were invited to Washington on several occasions to do things and see this and see that, and Victor Gottbaum had us down in New York City to see his operation in Council 37, DC 37. You know, just to, you know, I think I went to Michigan, I think to a county, maybe a state convention of the council out there. I forget the number of the council, but you know, they really tried to show us what went on, and the big difference, as I look back now, and is that there was more member involvement in the AFSCME unions. Most things that were done for the membership at CSEA were done here in Albany, and as a result of that, most of the activity took place here. And not that people in the Hitherlands weren't represented, they were, but they weren't involved in the process, and they weren't involved, you know, locally too much in the state process. But what we did uncover was the fact that we had 57 political bodies out in every county in the state that could affect local elections, and local elections of assemblymen and senators that had to come here to do their business here. So we kind of melted all together. Jim Featherston Haw was one of the in-house counsels, and he knew the political system very, very, very well and handled most of our lobbying for us. He did a good job with it, in my opinion, as I look back. But you know, we kind of emerged, and we were changing a lot, and then the curse of the merger came when Joe was executive vice president and Bill was the president, and we got our 2 seats on the international board, and there was an arrangement made for a slow dues increase thing, because the culture shock. When I came to work for CSEA, the dues was 50 cents a week. We used to sell membership because that's what a pack of cigarettes cost then, 50 cents. So we'd say, pack of cigarettes, you know. And I can remember one of our organizers, Jack Pender, that was his pitch, and it worked, you know. So we went from 50 cents a week, which was like $6.50 a year, $6.50 a week, so whatever it was. And then, you know, here they were going to be confronted with this huge dues increase because it was per capita to pay the international, and yada, yada, yada. So we kind of rolled that in over a 2 or 3 year period. I don't remember exactly what the figures were, but in the end, the affiliation happened, and we attended an international convention in Orange County, California. How was the other one? There was another one that we went to as delegates for the first time, and it excited our people, you know, to be part of this huge international organization. So you know, things kind of settled in.
Now, who was head of AFSCME at that point?
International?
Yeah.
Jerry. Jerry and Bill. Bill was secretary treasurer, and Jerry was the international president.
Right.
Jerry Worth. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. And McAtee. Jerry McAtee came in shortly after that.
Yeah.
I think Jerry did. He was from out of Pennsylvania, I believe. Yeah. And he came in right after that. I can't really give you exact dates or times for that.
Just
but
trying to get a picture of each of these guys from your point of view.
Yes. Yep. So the Taylor Law was huge, of course, for us, for the union, and then the '74 strike was a huge first step. We had other strikes in local government. In 1975, we had a strike in Dutchess County, the first local government to strike, and we followed that with a strike in Orange County, successful, both of them. We fought IBM, actually. That's when I found out where the corporate structure really worked in this state. We had trouble in Broome County, Town Union. We had trouble in Dutchess County. We had trouble in Ulster County. They were all controlled by IBM. They controlled the board. They had their budget. They owned the budget directors, the county legislature. So that really told me what we had to do. But we were growing. We went. I left the field representative position in I don't know, 69 or somewhere around there, and 70, maybe 70. I don't know, remember. And I became director of local government, and I had about 9,000 members. And when I left in '82, we had like 95,000 members, and bargaining units in every big state. You know, 80% of the population of the state is within 20 miles of the thruway or an interstate. So
Yeah.
we knew where we had to go to get the numbers, and we did. Worked out well.
Good. Now, you gave us a pretty candid picture of Wenzel. I want to get your candid opinions or pictures of McGowan and McDermott.
Yeah. I didn't, for some reason, Joe, of course, was a leader in the state. He worked for DOT as an engineer, I think. So his activities were all pretty much with the state employees.
Yeah.
At that time, we had contracts negotiated for state employees, and so the administration of those contracts was pretty much his bag. And my counterpart at the time was a guy by the name of John Carey, who was like director of state operations for the union. So I really didn't have a lot to do or to say to Joe or with him in his executive vice president role. I didn't work for him as president, so my relationship was really not that much. Bill, on the other hand, being a different kind of person altogether, in my opinion, came in, and we had staff meetings every morning that we participated in. So I always felt I was a part of the team, that were setting policy. George Taylor, kind of left me one time. I went to a seminar, and in my comments, they asked for comments at the end of the seminar, and I commented that some people came here for answers. I came here for ideas, and I got them. And that's what brought us together, because I got a note from him and said, can I use that? And I said, yes. And of course, when the Taylor Law contract came up, he had my name. But he said to me, there's three things that you got to realize in a labor union. One is that there have to be people to lead it. There have to be people to advise it, and there have to be people to manage it, because it's big business. And you do need advice, but most of all, you need leadership. So I kind of approached it from that, and I was relegated to a position of management to run the county division, which I did, and take things upstairs. And Bill was very open to that process, very open. Wenzel had been open to it before him, but with Ted it was, I don't know, more of a political consideration, I suppose, than practical. And Ted, I think Ted had been the Director of School Finance for the State Education Department, and Assistant Executive Director of the New York State Teachers Association. And I don't really think that his career prepared him, for when he came to CSEA, it was a part-time job. Feely before him used to come in lunchtime and sign his mail and go home, or go where he went. Ted was part-time, but he's the one that decided that he couldn't do it on a part-time basis. And he became the first full-time president for the union. So we used to meet with him, and he talked about MBOs, management by objectives, and things that were a little out of the ordinary for the folks that were here, that were out carousing with prospective members and around the state, telling stories and screaming at people. And here we sit down with this state educator, and he wants us to run the union by objective, and everybody said, what the hell is he talking about? But then he went. But Bill was good. Bill was a street fighter and cigar smoking street fighter, and knew the working people, because he was one himself. You got to know them. You got to be one, and he was. And he resisted his advisors. I've seen him do it from time to time. Took a great deal of advice under consideration from everybody, and you would see your ideas surface, which was great stuff. So I was delighted with his leadership right through 1982, when I left to go on other things with my high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And
well, you saw a lot of
everything else that
I know those
that
things.
this racket gives you.
You saw quite a shift in focus from the
Sure
beginning
did, yeah.
of CSEA,
Mhm.
your career with CSEA to the
Yep.
finish, because it went, really, like I said before, association to union, really.
Right. I also another major factor was Rocky going to Washington. Rockefeller went to Washington as vice president, and then I forget who I can't even remember the guy's name now. Great guy, was lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
He came in just for an interim period. And,
Yeah,
I mean, Rockefeller was a Republican. Rockefeller built the mall, and Rockefeller built the interstate. And you know, in our major cities, Utica 13% unemployment, Buffalo 17, Binghamton 12, 14. Here in the Capital District, our unemployment was like 2.3, because everybody that wanted to work had all the tradespeople, you know, working. And he knew that, and he was a favorite of unions for that reason. And he was a good man to do business with. Paul Douglas, Bobby Douglas was his secretary, and Al Marshall, who went on to go to the Empire State Building Corporation that they owned, the Rockefellers owned. We'd go over and say, what's going to happen this year? And they'd say, well, give us 5,000 people in the Capitol Park for a demonstration. And so that'll get the governor's attention, and then we'll be able to talk to him about salary increases and stuff like that. So we did, you know, and we had one streaker one time. McGowan was president, and I happened to be on good terms with the mayor, so I picked up the phone in McGowan's office, and he said, come and pick him up and bring his clothes. So he got back on his bus and went back to Pilgrim State Hospital down on Long Island, as an attendant, not as an inmate, not as a...
Isn't that where Danny worked?
Yeah, well, he was on the island now, but I don't know whether it was Pilgrim State or not. It might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the gal at that time was Betty Duffy, who was the president there. And Betty became the regional president, and she was a two-fisted, hard-drinking labor leader. Boy, was she tough, but you know, good, a good leader. So, you know, when we went from Malcolm Wilson was lieutenant governor. When we went from Rocky, when he went to Washington, to Malcolm, who knew, I guess, kind of that he was an interim, interim governor, and it was hard to talk to him because he really didn't want to pay much attention. So we kind of, you know, put it in neutral for 6 months or whatever it was, and then McGowan and Hugh Carey and I happened to get together at the invitation of some folks, and CSEA became Carey's Special Effort Association. That's what the governor called us, but we had some good times under Hugh Carey. Started out bumpy because New York City was in financial bankruptcy. Yonkers was in bankruptcy, so he had to create a mini-max to save Yonkers, and a Big Mac to save New York City. So we had some tough times in the beginning, but he had a budget director by the name of Bob Morgado, who went on to Time Warner, and a great job when he left, demanding cutbacks in the state workforce to balance the budget. And you know, we just kind of said, Bob, you know, you haven't been around long, but what are you going to do to reduce your end of the fulcrum here? What about management? How much you going to give it back there before we go to our people and say, you have to sacrifice? And, he got the message, and things cooled off. But the relationship with Carey grew and became excellent over his terms as governor. We did well with our contracts and our negotiations, and you know, when he needed some help someplace with something, we were able to understand, and we did it for him. So that was not a difficult transition because Rockefeller was a big spender.
Yeah.
Big spender, built the university out here, took Albany Country Club away from the elite of the area, and built the university and rolled up all the fairways and all the greens and moved them outside the city for them. I mean, he had a guy, I was trying to think of the chancellor's name, who Wenzel met with one day to talk about the role of CSEA and the university, and bald-headed fellow, I think of his name, and he looked right across the table at Wenzel and said, let me tell you something. He said, Nelson Rockefeller has told me to make the university system in the state of New York the best system in the world. And he said, I don't tend to let anybody or anything stand in my way. And he excused himself and left the room and never came back. So I said to Ted after about 15 minutes, I don't think he's coming back. We probably should leave. And he did. He built the university senate here, and there's like 11 of them across the state. We represented all of the employees, so you know, it was a great thing for us. But to go from Rocky to Carey wasn't hard because they both had the same support of labor, for labor and labor, support of labor. So things worked out well as far as I was concerned. And then Mario, when Mario ran, he was a favorite of CSEA's, and we endorsed him. And actually, probably were one of the major reasons why he ran for governor, because we met with him. He had been Secretary of State, so we kind of knew him a little. And I think we might have convinced him to run, actually. And the day after election, we were all sitting in Bill McGowan's office, and not all of us, he and I and Featherston Hall and a couple of other folks. And the governor walked over from the Capitol and came up to Bill's office and sat down with us and thanked us all. And so the relationship there was excellent. So, you know, I mean, not you know, they didn't give the state away to us, but they were there, and a lot of things happened. A lot of employee improvement programs, employee assistance program. A lot of money was put aside for to better the workplace outside of, you know, the usual health insurances and retirement and salaries. There were a lot of programs that were built in, yeah, I mean, to do things like that. And there were administrative procedures created to avoid firing, to precede arbitration if we had to go to arbitration. So there was a lot done, and I think we did a lot of it with the help of AFSCME, who of course had the international, who had experience, you know, along those lines. There was always a regional office here. Steve, I forget his name, was kind of the man at the time. I don't know whether he's still around or not, but so the marriage took place when it should have, my opinion, because we needed to do a lot of things that we hadn't been done before, and of course it enabled the dues increase, and so it gave us a lot of staff support from the international, allowed the union itself, CSEA, to increase their staff. Our county divisions ranks quadrupled more than that, so we needed to get out and treat our county folks with a little more attention. We were able to do that. So the marriage came, I think, at a time when it should have, when it was needed.
Was that Steve Fontazzo?
No.
Asked me?
No,
I think. And then later on as an area director.
I think it was. I think I'd like to say it was a Jewish name, but I can't.
Regenstrife?
Yeah, Steve Regenstrife. Yeah. Is he still around?
Yeah, he's head of our retiree department.
Oh, good. I'll tell him I said hello. Yeah, he and I had some frank conversations about policy and about what was going to happen around town. So, yeah.
Any other? You talked about Betty Duffy as one of the region.
Colorful.
Presidents. Colorful. Any other people in the region, head of regions, that you remember in particular or in general that
well,
you get a picture
I knew
of?
them all. You know, we had Bob Latimer in Western New York, who now has been succeeded by Flo Trippi, I guess, from what I understand. Flo, I knew her when she was, I don't know what the hell she was, but no, I got to know Bob pretty well. I used to travel. We represented Erie County and school districts in Buffalo and the city of Buffalo actually itself. So, you know, I got to meet all of these folks. And in Syracuse, we represented Onondaga County, and Jimmy, regional president there, and I, you know, we became friends. Of course, here in the Capital District, it was kind of overshadowed. The region was overshadowed by the fact that we were here, and that's when the regional office concept was created, so that they could take the local affairs out of this building. Let's see, Pat Mascioli was regional president, I think, down in Region 3. I can't remember who it was before him, but I had to know them all because I traveled. I mean, Nassau and Suffolk County, we represented both county employees, and Hempstead, North Hempstead, and Oyster Bay, the three huge towns, and in Nassau County, we represented. Oh, I have a lot of stories that we won't relate here, but
but this is just for CSEA.
Oh no,
It's up to you, but
we don't do that. Well, my first visit to the town of Hempstead, Ralph Natale was the town president, and the sanitation men were on strike, so down I go, the Lone Ranger. I mean, like nobody ever wanted to travel with me for some reason, because they didn't know what the hell was going on, and neither did I. But at least I was brazen enough to go and jump in. So I go down to talk to Ralph, make an appearance, you know, showing that the CSEA is here and we're behind you and this and that. I also learned that they had the first desalinization plant in New York State. They were taking the salt out of Long Island Sound water and this is 30 years ago now, before it was ever dreamed of. The only time I ever heard about it before that was on the ships in the Navy when we used to have to make our own water, and they had a huge contingent from Japan there. And Ralph is saying, we don't know what to do. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, Ralph Queso, who went on to be, I think, congressman and then the judge, he was his brother-in-law, and he was the town supervisor. And he said, Ralph wants us to call the strike off while the Japanese are here to look at our desalinization plant. I said, well, tell him you'll call it off. What? He said, you know how long it took us to get these guys to go out on strike? They didn't want to go out on strike. They're all cousins of everybody. Everybody knows everybody. I said, well, I didn't say, call off the strike. You didn't let me finish with the settlement. Why don't you and I go see Ralph? So we did, and we settled the package that day, and we called off the strike, and the Japanese never had to know, that we were having these kind of problems.
Use what you got.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh, there were a lot of, I had a collective bargaining specialist that worked for me that was down at Town Union, controlled by IBM, negotiating a contract one time, and he called me up and he said, I want to buy some beer for the boys before the meeting tonight. And I said, fine, because they were going to go over and pick at a town board meeting. I said, fine, go ahead. And then, so I don't know, a week or so later, I used to meet with them every Monday, my troops, and how'd that work out? He said, oh, good. He said, I got 10 cases of canned beer. I said, canned beer? Why the hell didn't you get a couple of cases? Oh no, he said, we took all the empty cans over and we stood outside and we're throwing them against the outside the building while the meeting was going on. I said, oh, wonderful idea, wonderful idea. And they were meeting down in Suffolk County one time, and I used to meet with them every morning. I had 6 collective bargaining specialists, they call them, and they'd come in every Monday morning. I was criticized for that, for bringing them in every week, but we sat down every week and we shared experiences and shared stories, and to this day, I still think it was the best thing that I ever did, because they worked together as a team, and if one was having trouble, they'd talk about it, and ideas would come up and percolate up. And one of them was negotiating a contract in Westchester, Suffolk County one time. He inspects the count. I see like 4 dozen donuts. I said, what the hell is this? He said, well, the negotiator for the county every day would come in to the meeting with 4 dozen donuts and say, okay, well, we can all have our coffee and donuts. And he's good. And he said, every goddamn time we asked for something, we demanded something. He had a big picture of Rockefeller on the wall, and he said he wouldn't do that. So how can we do that here if he wouldn't do it? So he said, I went out one morning and we went in and ate all of the donuts before the meeting started. He and his team, they ate every donut that was in the boxes. And he said, we turned Rockefeller's picture over. And in comes the county team with their county spokesman. They all go up to the donut boxes. No donuts. Looked up and saw Rocky's picture. And so the whole attitude changed. It was very hard very, very difficult to convince people in any conventional way, these politicians who would run their local governments for years, whether it was a town or a city, or I had another fellow, little Italian guy who was tough as nails, and I went to a meeting with him one time and just sat to watch and listen, and the board of supervisors were all sitting up in their chamber, as if they were running a meeting, and we were sitting down on the floor at a table like we were on trial, and the chairman says, well, can we start the negotiations? And my man said, yeah, we'll start as soon as you get down off that goddamn perch and come down and get down here and sit down. Geez, they were aghast, this little imp who dared, but they did. They came down. So, we had some good times. We had some laughs and some good times along the way. Not to minimize the difficulty sometimes they were all bad times and difficult, but there was time for some laughs every once in a while, and I had the reputation of organizing some of the best Christmas parties this union ever had. They're gone now, but when we had them, they were dynamite.
From those.
Oh, we do, yeah. Why is the Christmas party on Thursday night? I said, are you married? Yes. You have children? Yes. I said, well, do you want to come in here on Friday morning and suffer your hangover, or should we have the party on Friday and you can stay home on Saturday and abuse your wife and kids? Oh, good idea, Joe. I said, thank you very much. Yeah, so we'd have our Christmas parties on Thursday night. Half the people wouldn't show up the next day. Half that did. We're walking around here holding our heads all day. So it was fine with me. What the hell? Made a nice Christmas. No, we had some good times, and I enjoyed it. I left and went up to Hugh Carey, and I became personal friends. So I left and became Commissioner of the Department of Corrections. It was time to go.
Yeah, well,
Time to go.
it was certainly an interesting period in CSEA's
Oh,
history.
yeah, we
that you
had
were there.
really absolute transition, absolute transition.
Yeah, nice picture.
From bowling and clam bakes. They still had them and they still did that, but
Yeah.
but they had more educational seminars and attended more regional meetings for educational purposes. And you know, in the end, which is good. It allows the people to feel they're a part and to become more of a part of the union.
So you would give advice for people today based on your experience with CSEA then, what would you tell them?
Go Teamster. Just kidding. I mean, I don't. Fortunately, a lot of the folks that are here were folks that came here when I was here, so I'm not a stranger when I came in the building. And I knew Danny. Like I think he was a motor vehicle operator.
Yeah.
Driver
from Brooklyn.
That's
Still
it.
also
Yeah,
sells
yeah, and you know, so it's nice to come in and chat with them. I follow it. I get the newsletter, the Ask Me newsletter. Pay my dues. I don't really have any advice. Just support your union. That's
Yeah.
that's about it, because they never go any place without taking their members. Thank goodness.
You got anything you want to?
No, it was.
I think we got a lot of great
Yeah, it was
stuff
good.
here.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you
No,
very
no.
much. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure.
I didn't get a chance to go through. I got some still pictures
Oh.
in case you might
Well, yeah,
want
I
them.
think Steve would want those.
Yeah.
You
Rockefeller.
probably
If I could
know
find
that.
the one, it's Rocky and I taken.
Oh, great.
Geez, I don't know how many years ago, and then Hugh Carey, and
Because eventually.
who was the first black
something-
congresswoman
Oh,
from New York? Shirley Chisholm.
yeah.
She's the one that convinced me that we should form a committee, a women's committee for the union. So, I think about 1974, I went to Wenzel and I said, we had a young lady by the name of June Scott, who was the board rep from the Department of State. Forceful, knew what she was doing, but did it in a nice way. So we appointed her as chairman of the Women's Committee, ad hoc Women's Committee, and of course that women's division thing is now grown.
Yeah, very important.
Huge. But we started that, and I was proud of that. But
Good.
Shirley Chisholm was a conversation with her that convinced me that we should,
People
we should
influence
do
things
that.
and-
And the pins came out of women's places in the union and things like that. And
That's good.
yeah, that was good. And we recognized the folks that would provide leadership in certain areas, and we identified them through ad hoc committees or permanent committees or temporary committees, and if they worked and succeeded, then they became a permanent part of the organization. Local governments, we created social service committees and probation department committees, because they were the leaders. I mean, they were,
Yeah.
not to belittle anybody else, but they were like the educated folks, and were willing to step up because they were aware of social ills and things that needed to be done, and they always were willing to step up to the plate for us. So we kind of started tuning people in. I'm sure that they're tuned in more keenly now than they were
Well,
then.
yeah,
but
but I mean, you have to start someplace. And
yeah,
it was a
yeah,
good beginning for the
yeah.
social
Well,
movement.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, good.
I
I
enjoyed it.
enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, oh no, my pleasure,
Great to-
my pleasure.